Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and I guess I owe those of you in the viewing audience an explanation because you've been watching reruns of my TV show for 3 months now. And the reason I haven't been here is because I had a little accident late in the fall. I fell and my ankle was broken, my left ankle. But I'm better now, and I am back to making new television programs. So, and I'm happy to be back. And my guest today is Patty Benton, who you know from the Northern Chautauqua Canine Rescue, but she's here today. We're following up with a show we did together back in the fall about our vegan lifestyle. And this time we're wanting to let you know just what life is like for animals, farm animals, before they become food or their byproducts become food. And thank you for coming on today, Patty.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, I kind of like to think of this, I like to put myself into where I am putting myself in the place of the animals to see how and think about how they feel, because they live lives that are not pleasant.
Or natural.
Or natural. And although I do have to say there's a dairy farm on the road we live on, and those cows get to go out to the pasture to graze, but they're not one of the big factory farms. Mm-hmm. But, well, anyway, thank you for coming on.
Okay.
And we're going to go over some things. We were joking a little bit about foie gras before we started recording the program, and maybe a lot of you have never had it, and I'm pretty there's probably not even a restaurant that serves it in Chautauqua County.
At least not, anyway.
I haven't seen one on a menu anywhere. But for those of you who don't know, foie gras is fatty liver.
From a duck.
Fatty liver from a duck or a goose. Mm-hmm. And they make the livers of these birds get that way by several times a day, just putting something into their throat and shoving in a lot of way too much food, way more than they would eat normally. And it's a French word, I guess, foie gras. It must have started in France. And so anyways, it causes them to have fatty liver disease. And it would be like, so I kind of look at it from the point of view of how would I like it if somebody were to put a tube
down your throat,
down my throat and force-fed me way too much food several times a day. So you were going to mention something about the normal lifespan of certain animals.
So when we discussed having this show and talking about this topic, I started to do a little research because I don't know everything. And I'd like to say that, so anything I say today, I mean, I have done some research. I didn't cite any references. I did look up some stuff on the internet. I've visited Farm Sanctuary. I've got literature from them before. And, you can, and in my research, when I was just like looking, I would do a search on a computer. And, because I was wondering, like, okay, veal, for example, like how bad is that really as far as, how they're treated, the calves?
Yeah, they're
male calves, or, I could be female calves that they don't feel are going to be productive as a dairy cow. So, you know, are there any places where they're not just stuck in a little pen and, you know, just fed a diet so that they stay anemic? They're not allowed to move around. I mean, that's what you hear, and a lot of people don't eat veal because of that. So, you know, you can always find somebody that's going to say, oh, but these veal, I found this one lady, and she went by like Dairy Mary or something like that. So, you know, we know where she's coming from. And she was talking about, oh, this one place, I mean, this is one place. How many places are like this, where the calf gets to stay with the mother, you know, until it's like 5 months old. But okay, so maybe it's out in the pasture, maybe it's with its mother for 5 months and it's getting fed its mother's milk. But the bottom line is it's going to be slaughtered. And that's where, so I thought, well, I wonder how long they would live in a natural environment if they were not slaughtered. So they're slaughtered at 5 months old. But a dairy cow, which a veal is the byproduct of the dairy industry, a dairy cow can live 15 to 20 years. And so they're slaughtering a veal calf. I mean, they're big at that point. They weigh about 500 pounds. But that's being slaughtered at like, you know, 4 or 5 months or sooner. Depends on, you know, the farm they're in or the economy or whatever. And, you know, that's basically a baby. And cows if cows were left alone and like, well, if, you know, we didn't kill them, we'd be overrun by them. No, we could stop breeding them and then we wouldn't be overrun by them.
Because most of them are not natural pregnancies because they're artificially inseminated.
They're artificially inseminated. So when the calf is born, if it's a male, it is worthless to the dairy industry. So it goes to, they either let it die if it's not healthy, or they take it away from the mother. The mothers mourn and bellow, and the calves cry for the mother. And, you know, if it's a female, now it's just separated also, but raised to be a dairy cow. And dairy cow just goes through just a continual cycle of artificially inseminated, having a baby, and taken away, and then just milking. And I read that if a cow was just, you know, not in one of these factories, it would produce about 1 gallon of milk a day for its baby. But in these factories, the production is like 7 to 8 gallons of milk a day. And they only live about 4 years. And
it says here in this brochure that I have, 10 times more than they would produce in nature.
Yeah.
With genetic manipulation.
Right.
So,
and 4 years, and then they're sent to slaughter. So, you know, you've been pregnant, and you've worked your whole life, and you're in a stall, and your babies are taken from you, and you're getting milked 2-3 times a day, and finally your body's giving out. You can't do it anymore. And you're not producing enough, or you can't get pregnant again.
Yeah.
So you're sent to slaughter.
Yes, it says here, in a healthy environment, cows would live in excess of 20 years.
Yeah.
On modern dairies, cows are slaughtered after just 3 or 4 years and ground up into hamburger and other low-quality beef products.
Right.
Like at the fast food restaurants.
Exactly.
And which means that it's that for a few years, in order to keep producing milk, they have to get pregnant practically once every year in order to keep giving milk, and then they're slaughtered because they can't get pregnant and give milk anymore when they're only a few years old, and they should be able to live into their early 20s.
Right. So these are juveniles too, at 4 years old. I mean, and they call it spent. You're spent. And so that's a dairy cow, and so the little baby boy cows they go off to be veal, and the females are just raised to take the place of the mother.
Yeah, and just to show you, if people are eating these animals, they're eating animals that have had the following diseases. Bovine leukemia virus, bovine immunodeficiency virus, and John's disease, whose human's counterpart is Crohn's disease, are rampant on modern dairies, but are difficult to detect and go unnoticed a lot of the time. Milk fever, a disease caused by calcium depletion due to excessive milk production, and some of them are, that particular disease is characterized by lethargic, constipated cows. So basically, and mastitis is another thing that dairy cows get. It's an infection of the udders.
And a lot of that goes into the milk,
Yeah,
infection.
well, that means, blood.
Yeah.
Blood comes out and gets into the milk supply. So also laminitis, which causes lameness, metabolic disorders, ketosis.
And the whole ridiculous thing is that humans do not need cow's milk.
No. Well, one time at one of our Vegetarian Society dinners, a woman came with her teenage daughter because the teenage daughter was interested in being vegetarian. And I remember the mother was just so adamant that you would get sick if you didn't have cow's milk. And we were trying to explain to her, no, you won't get sick if you don't drink milk, And she just didn't seem to be able to accept that as a fact.
Right.
Because back when we were children in the 50s and 60s, well, I guess there's even a certain amount of it too anyway, nowadays even. These ads that would be on television that would say we needed it for strong bones and teeth. And there was something about those ads when you'd see like a teenager or somebody drinking a glass of milk. They always made it look like it tasted better than it actually did. Do you remember thinking that?
No, I never liked it.
I would think, I really wish it tasted as good as they make it look on television.
I don't know. I think maybe I'm lactose intolerant, and I never liked milk.
A lot of people
people
don't like it. That's why so many people drink chocolate milk.
Right. Well,
instead.
yeah. When the years I spent in school, it's like, chocolate milk they'd all take chocolate milk. They'd put chocolate milk on cereal in the morning, which is not good, but that's another whole topic that we could talk about someday as the school lunch program.
We could do a show on that.
I don't want to get in trouble. I could talk about chickens a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about chickens.
Because that's interesting now because everybody but me or you are complaining about the price of eggs. Well, I have no idea what the price of eggs are because I haven't bought eggs in I don't know how long.
A week or so ago they were talking about them being up to $6 a dozen. This morning when we had the radio turned on at home, they were saying it's up to $7 a dozen.
Wow.
Now. That's a lot of money.
So the reason is right now because the bird flu. And birds get bird flu. It does come from, wild migratory birds as they fly south, but it only takes, if they're flying over and you've got chickens out in your yard and they're flying over and they're pooping as they go, your flock can get this bird flu. And I had a little bit of information here from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. More than 20 million egg-laying hens, and I'll say quote unquote died because they euthanize them, in the last quarter of 2024. So that's October, November, December. More than 20 million egg-laying hens died because of bird flu. It can also spread to dairy cows, and from this information that I had, there were 66 human cases. Now it doesn't, it can make humans really sick, but I don't know if there were any deaths from bird flu. But it's just, do we need that hopping into our,
I guess
viruses mutate?
I guess at this point in time, it's not very common in humans.
Right.
But it could mutate.
Right. So, so that's so chickens, and so an egg laying. Okay, so an egg laying hen produces, I found this information, 300 eggs per year.
This brochure says 260.
Okay.
Close.
Yeah. And then, so if you have, now a lot of people have backyard chickens now. Mm-hmm. And, like my neighbors do. And actually, I look over there and I see happy chickens, happy hens. They've got a really nice habitat. They're out there cleaning it out all the time. They go out and get the eggs every day. She's out there 6 o'clock in the morning, opening up, letting the chickens out, and out there putting them to bed at night. They've got a lot of place to scratch around, and which is their natural. That's what they would do. They scratch around in the dirt. They eat ticks, which is great.
They eat ticks.
They eat ticks, so that's good. So I have dogs, so I don't have any ticks in my yard because we've got chickens next door, and they've got cover. They like to have because predators would come after them from overhead. So they've got they're fenced in and they have quite a big area. So, people that have backyard chickens, those chickens can live 6 to 8 years depending on the breed. And there's some, is this what your brochure is saying too?
Well, let me see.
Or maybe longer. I've had Plymouth Rocks can live 8 to 10 years.
It almost seems to me that somebody with experience with it had told me something about chickens can live into their teens.
Well, maybe if you're, depending on the
if
the breed.
they're not mistreated.
So then, so an egg-laying hen is, let's see, when does it lasts about, baby, okay, so in the egg, let me see, where's the one, eggs, they're slaughtered at 18 months.
Oh my gosh.
So, they've got about a year or two of laying eggs, but they could live 8 to 10 years, maybe longer. But after, a year of laying an egg practically every day.
It would be like us giving birth.
Yeah, every day.
Almost every day.
Every day.
I know.
So they're worn out, and then they're made into stock or, or pet food. They're put into pet food or stock, so they don't get to live very long either. And so if you're a little chicken, like you go down to Tractor Supply in the spring, and they always have the little peeps running around, and they're so cute.
They're so cute.
Ducklings and the chickens.
They're so cute. You could take a couple home and have them for pets.
You could. You could do that. You could do that.
They wouldn't know. The people running the store wouldn't know why you were buying them. But I actually have met people who are fairly famous in the vegan world, and there are people who are making diapers for chickens to wear so that they can take them.
Oh.
They can take rescued chickens home and let them live in their house with them. And they're making these diapers out of cloth, like the old-fashioned cloth diapers, so that they actually don't have to be disposed of. You can wash them and reuse them. So,
so in that industry, you've got the hens, and those are females, okay, and they're not fertile, the eggs. So if you're born, you come out of your egg, you're this cute little fluffy thing, and you're a male, they just throw you in, it's called maceration. They just grind them up. They throw them in a thing, or they suffocate them.
Sometimes they just throw them in trash bags.
Yeah, they just throw them in trash, and they're going to die.
By suffocation.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, is it worse, like you can just be killed immediately when you're 1 day old, or you grow up to be the hen that's stuck in a little cage producing eggs, and then they kill you when you're like 2 years old. So I don't know which is worse.
Yeah, it says here to produce eggs, approximately 300 million egg-laying hens in the U.S. are confined in battery cages, small wire cages stacked in tiers and lined up in rows in huge warehouses that typically house from 80,000 to 100,000 hens in one of these factory farms for eggs. And they're packed into a cage just 16 inches wide. They cannot stretch their wings or legs, and they cannot fulfill any natural behaviors or social needs.
And they're debeaked.
Yeah, they cut the beaks and a lot of the time their toes off so they can't injure each other. But then they're living in they wind up getting ailments because they're due to filthy dust-laden warehouse conditions.
And the ammonia smell.
The ammonia smell, and so they always have sinus diseases. Veterinary care is non-existent at factory egg farms.
And some of them die in there and they don't even notice. No one notices because they're so huge, these factories.
Yeah.
And they don't even care. I mean,
No,
they don't care.
They don't.
It doesn't matter.
They don't.
Oh, well.
I wish I would, on an episode sometime, show the DVD that Paul McCartney made for PETA, if I could, but I would have to have permission from PETA to show it. And since Patty moved up the day to her first interview here, because the other person that was really supposed to be here today had to cancel on short notice, so we didn't have time to contact PETA or anything like that.
Another thing I'd like to mention about, so this egg, so the eggs are expensive because of the bird flu. Now the taxpayers, besides paying $7 a dozen for eggs, we're also paying the farmers who had to euthanize their flock. So you've got, so we're...
Because the government subsidizes...
Right. And they don't want this to spread. So to incentivize farmers to report and quickly stomp out the viruses, basically kill your flock, a USDA program pays producers for eggs and poultry they destroy. So last year, Animal and Plant Inspection Service said it spent $1.25 billion on payments to farmers since the outbreak started in 2022. So
wow.
And I saw this on the news the other day. Some Long Island duck farmer who had 100,000 ducks, his flock got the H5N1 virus, and it was on the news the other day where they had to kill them. And then I thought, well, how do you euthanize 100,000 ducks? Well, so I looked that up, and that's pretty terrible. They either put them in a place and then fill it with carbon dioxide and they suffocate, or there's some kind of a foam that they just cover them with this foam, and then I guess they suffocate from this foam. So what a way to go. You know, it's like, can the humans do anything? Can we do it? And the thing is, if we did anything like this to dogs, and you'll see people when that Chinese dog festival happens and people are eating dogs and I see stuff on Facebook all the time. You're not on there, but people are just irate that how dare they, and then if they came over, if you could just look inside some of these barns where the pigs are in these little tiny crates, they can hardly move.
Right.
The babies are taken from them.
Well, they talk about slatted floors for farm animals
right.
to stand on. They don't have a solid. For some reason, there's slats.
Probably so the poop can fall through. So it's easier. It's all about production. It's all about how can we make the most money with the least amount of expense and keep this animal the shortest amount of time. You know, they're fed on a natural diet to fatten them up. Like turkeys, they can't even, most turkeys, you buy a turkey, I don't, but people buy a turkey before Thanksgiving, and that turkey probably couldn't even walk by the time it was slaughtered. And it's only 10 to 17 weeks old, and they can live up to 15 years.
The turkeys?
Turkeys are that young, and chickens for meat are 5 to 7 weeks old. So when you're going out for a dozen chicken wings, you've just killed 6 chickens, you know, or well, I guess 4, because there's like, so you've killed 4 chickens to get your dozen, or 3 or 4 chickens to get your dozen wings, and those chickens were just babies. They're 5 to 7 weeks old, and they're being slaughtered. And they're being slaughtered is not fun. I mean, to be slaughtered, first of all, they go in, there used to be a place in Westfield, and when I was younger, this friend of mine lived there, and she used to work over there, and they grew chickens from peeps to, I don't know what the next stage is, but they were pretty young. And my friend used to go in there, and her and her family, and they would pick the chickens. So they just had to grab them by the feet and cram them into these boxes. And then they went off somewhere else. I don't know if they went to slaughter then, or if they went to get bigger somewhere, or if they were laying hens. I'm not sure. I just remember going into this barn, and here was just a sea of chickens, just everywhere chickens, you know, and they weren't even in cages yet, but they were all put in cages and taken somewhere. So then so if they're slaughtered, okay, so you know somebody's grabbing them and they hang them upside down. They're shackled. They're hanging upside down. It's all on a conveyor, and then they go through. I read it's like either like an electric water, so your head's being dragged through. Imagine. You're hanging upside down, your head's being dragged through an electrified water bath, and that's supposed to stun you. And then you come out of there and you run through a machine that slits your throat and you bleed out. So if you moved your head or the electric current wasn't right enough, you might still be conscious when your throat's getting slit. But imagine the terror from the minute, you know, or even the transportation, or even like the veal cows when they're taken, you know, now we're going to take, or even like this lady that had the cows, the veal cows that got to live with their mothers. Now you're going to load them into a truck. That's foreign to them. They're going to be scared. And then they get out somewhere and they're prodded along down a chute, and they shoot a bolt through their head, and that's supposed to knock them out. And I've read some stuff about people that work in these places, and sometimes the cow's not totally knocked out. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 knocks in the head to try to knock them out. And then they're hung upside down, and their throats are slit, and then they're cut up into pieces. And it's like, you know, they might still be alive when they're slitting their throat, but the whole idea is to get it done as fast as we can, production, money. And a lot of the workers, I mean, they either get desensitized or they can't, you know, it's really hard on the workers because it's so mentally and spiritually taxing.
Yeah, there was this one, the one video that I was talking about, there's one spot in it where a man is, well, I don't know that it was chickens, it might have been a goose or something else, but they were being raised for food, and he grabbed a hold of it and started wringing its neck to kill it.
Yeah.
You know, it was...
Yeah, that's another way they can kill them. You know, if it's like when they have to euthanize them, they can just break their neck, you know?
Yeah.
So imagine that as your job, you know?
It would be very unpleasant.
But, you know, there are also people in the industry that are so desensitized that they're actually abusive to these animals. They're kicking them, they're punching them, you know, they don't mind prodding them with an electric prod, you know, they get a kick out of it. I mean, that's just sick. That's just bizarre. But, so, you know, my list of like how old they are, if you're a male chicken, you got 1 day. If you're in the egg, you know, veal, a week to 24 weeks, meat chickens 5 to 7 weeks, ducks 7 to 8 weeks, rabbits, I don't know, you know, I got a pet rabbit at home, 10 to 12 weeks. Goats, I don't know anybody around here that eats goats, but I mean, it does happen. they're 12 to 20 weeks, but they could live 14 years. And geese could live 8 to 15 years. And they're just like, we're talking weeks when they're slaughtered. And turkeys, 10 to 17 weeks. So that turkey you get at Thanksgiving is just a baby, and it could live up to 15 years. Pigs could live 10 to 12 years. Pigs are really intelligent. They're mostly slaughtered between 5 and 6 months old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
5 and 6 months old.
you know, like people who've had them for pets have found that that they're so smart they can figure out on their own how to play a video game without somebody teaching them.
They are really smart.
They just figure things out.
And they're really sweet. I was at Farm Sanctuary one time. Maybe I mentioned this the last time I was here, but we were able to go. They had rescued some pigs from a flood, and they were pregnant, and so the pigs had babies. And the pigs weren't used to being, you know, like free range with their babies, so somebody had to round the clock sit with the pigs to make sure that the babies didn't get stepped on when the moms got up and moved around. But the moms were good moms, and they'd lay down the hay, and the little babies would come over and nurse. But the babies would hide under the hay, and then the mom's like getting up, walking around. So I was able to go in and take one of the shifts. So I sat there for 2 hours with my son, and we just sat there in the hay. And these little piglets, I mean, they're like puppies. They come up and fall asleep in your lap. You know, they just want to be snuggled, and then they're playful. You know, they're just, I mean, we have puppies down at the shelter now. You go in there and they're all playful and run around and playing with toys. Pigs are just like that.
Yeah. Well, this is a Farm Sanctuary brochure. There's a cute pig there named Teresa. And the expression on her face is so adorable.
They are really cute. We got to go in the big pig barn where the big ones are, and they are ginormous. I mean, they're as big as a couch, but they like to have their ears scratched, their bellies rubbed, and they're very nice. I mean, they're very social, you know. And here we are, like, I mean, confining, you know, and it's...
And they can be trained. I mean, you know, people who've had them in their houses as a pet have said that they will go... They can be trained to go outside to go to the toilet like your pet dogs are.
Right.
So
yeah, I should get a couple for my backyard. I don't think we're allowed to keep them in the village.
Probably not.
But it's just, you know, the whole thing is they're just the way that the industry has developed, and you know, you're cramming animals in an unnatural environment. You're not letting them do what they would normally do. And then you're feeding them and medicating them so that they get big fast. It's all about money, and it's not about like healthy eating, because look how many Americans are sick, overweight. You know, all the cholesterol and heart attacks and diabetes, and I mean, if people would just. I don't know, when I was a kid, we didn't eat a lot of meat. We ate, because we had a big family, and my mother would can and, you know, do as much as she could with you know, if the neighbor had an apple tree, come over and get the apples for free. Anything that we could get cheap or free, she would can it or put it up for the winter time. And really a steak was like, you know, you got a little tiny piece of the steak, whatever, which, you know, and now I don't do it at all, but, you know, nowadays people, you know, and fast food, it's like there's so much, you get to, you know, you go out all the time. You know, when I was a kid, going out to dinner was like once a year maybe, and now it's every day people, and what are they getting? You know, what is the quality of that food if you're getting from these fast food places or takeout places? You know, and it's just, and that's why we have all these animals being killed when they're, you know,
well, you know, there's
confined.
These famous doctors that have done a lot of research, have done studies where rather than using animals, they try these plant-based diets. They get people to sign up to do the plant-based diets, and the people wind up getting healthier.
Yeah.
And like one doctor who's really famous for figuring out what causes diabetes. His name is,
Well, there's
Well,
Colin Campbell, there's
there,
who's the
well,
other guy?
well, they all advocate like Campbell and no, this is Bernard.
Right, yep, yep.
Yeah, Neil Bernard.
Yeah.
He's the one that's famous for figuring out what caused diabetes. Well, it turns out it's fat.
Mm-hmm.
It's fat that causes diabetes. And he says the people who have type 2 diabetes, their bodies actually do produce enough insulin, but the fat gums up the body's cells. And so the fat gets in the way of the insulin getting into the bodily tissues. And they're even saying now, you know, like him and Caldwell Esselstyn and T. Colin Campbell and all of those guys, they're all saying even the vegetable oils and things that people shouldn't eat that either. So because it's fat that the fat that gets in the way of, and that's why people become diabetic.
Just eat plants. That's all you got to do. Another interesting thing I found too, and you know, and this is like what we were talking earlier about people, you know, people that we know or that we care about, and they don't want to know. When you start to talk to them about the way animals are confined, and you know, maybe you should think about more plants and less meat. They don't want to hear it, and then. You know, but there have been a lot of videos, and one of the places I support is Mercy for Animals, an organization, and they would go in and like do undercover work, which has to be really hard because they actually have to go and work in these places and be undercover. And they were doing, you know, making video when they could, and then making documentaries. Well, then, you know, of course the factory farmers don't like that, the big corporations, so then they got these agriculture gag laws, so ag gag laws, and there's several states now that have those, so if you do, you can't go in and be undercover activist, and so you can't even let people know, because a lot of times if people knew, if they could see, if this was on the news, you know, like at the news at night at 6 o'clock, like this is what Mercy for Animals found in this place in, you know, whatever farm down in North Carolina or wherever it is. And then they show some of this footage, like people would be outraged and it might make them think differently. But, you know, they've got the money, they've got the lawyers, so they got to put a stop to that. So, which is sad, because I think if people really knew, then, you know, if you took a bunch of little kids to a slaughterhouse for a field trip, they'd never eat school lunch again. You know?
I imagine that. Yeah, that's what that video by Paul McCartney, he calls it glass walls. And he said if slaughterhouses had glass walls, we'd all be vegetarian.
I agree with that.
And one thing that's maybe not common knowledge also that has to do with fast foods restaurants is for many years, actually, since the beginning of the fast food industry, fast food restaurants and things, I guess they have their own slaughterhouses or something. And there's a book that tells all about it. It's called Fast Food Nation. And then a movie was made about it too, where some very famous actors played parts in it that told a lot about it too. But it seems that for many years, the fast food industry has been illegally importing Mexicans and Guatemalans into this country to work in the fast food, or I mean their slaughterhouses. And it's a very dangerous, working in the slaughterhouses is a very dangerous line of work, but it's a way that they could get cheap labor to work in these places, in these slaughterhouses. And it's pretty sickening, you know. A lot of people would get injured and killed actually working in the slaughterhouses, especially if they were the night shift and had to clean the place because things get really slippery. And so anyways, they would go to these countries and tell people about, you know, how they could get jobs if they came here. And then they'd have to hike all the way across a desert. And they would go over in vans and pick up these people and meet them at the border, basically, and pick them up and bring them into the country. So it's not very nice. But I highly recommend reading, if you get a chance, Fast Food Nation.
You know, I have some friends, and you know, they share stuff on the Facebook Reels and stuff like that. And you know, I went to Farm Sanctuary. You know, I visited her several times, and initially, it's just so hard for me to watch the things now. I mean, I already know, and I really don't want to see anybody, you know, being tortured, whether it's humans or animals. You know, it's just so sad, you know, to see that. I just have a hard time. So, you know, when one of my friends will share it, I'm like, I can't even look at that because I already know, and I'm already doing what I can do other than, you know, be a total activist. And
yeah, well, you know, once I've seen some videos of things that go on in the kind of places that we're talking about today. And honestly, after I've seen a video once, if I'm sharing it with somebody else and I'm in the room with them, I actually close my eyes.
Well, I just can't even imagine, like, you know, imagine you're the person working in the factory where the chicks are born. Oh, I did find something interesting about that, which I'll finish up with. So you're plucking these cute little fluff balls out of, you know, and you're male, and you're throwing them in this thing, and they're just going down and getting ground up. How can you go home? I mean, it makes me sick just thinking about it. How do you go home, and how are you okay with that?
Yeah, the first day for me would be the last. The day after the last night, I'd have a good night's sleep.
Oh, good, I got a job. Well, here's what you're going to do. Or it's like, are you kidding me? No, I'm not going to. So I did read a thing, though, that, I mean, this is good, but not good because, you know, it's just going to, okay, we're just going to keep going with this. Somebody's invented a machine, and it's not widely used yet. Maybe it's used in other countries, Europe and whatever. I can't remember where I read that it was invented. But it can look at the egg before it's hatched and find out if it's a male or a female.
Really?
So they can get rid of the egg before the chicken even hatches.
Oh.
So I guess that's somewhat better, but you know, you're still like, you're going to keep this industry going because now just the female chickens, you know, more or less, you're probably not going to be 100% with this, even with this new machine, like looking through this egg and telling whether it's male or female inside the egg. So basically, you're going to get rid of it before it pops out of the egg. But if you're the female, then you're born, and now you're going to be an egg-laying hen. So we're just going to keep going with this, you know,
until you can't lay eggs anymore, and then we're
we're
going to get rid of you too.
So you're better off being the male chick inside the egg, being seen by this machine, and you're just gone before you're born. And but if you're a female, now you're going to be in a cage laying eggs, you know, unless you get the virus, and then they're going to smother you with, you know, carbon dioxide or electrocute you or something, or wring your neck if you're in a small flock. I don't know.
Yeah. I've got some other brochures here. the truth about beef and the truth about seafood, that's pretty gross and disgusting.
Yeah, I didn't even, I know a little bit about seafood. Like a lot of it now is farm raised, which basically they're just raised in filth.
Here's a picture of a cow that has cancer in one of its eyes.
Yeah. But they'll
See.
grind it up and people will eat it.
It's the one up here. You can see it's like the eye just looks like there's a big growth around the eye.
Yikes.
And they say that these cancers will go past the eye when they get real big, and it'll be like a crater in the head of the cow. And yeah, that's one of the problems. There's a man named Howard Lyman, who
Oh, yeah.
the Mad Cowboy.
Yeah, right. I think I have his book.
Oh, do you?
I think I do, yeah.
Well,
Or his video. I mean, I think he did a book and maybe he did a movie. I do have that.
yeah. He, I've seen him on video. He was, well, to begin with, he grew up in the beef industry, and he and his brother continued to be in the beef industry as adults. And the brother wound up getting, I think it was leukemia, and died. And then it got to where they figured that these health problems had come from toxins that were used in the beef industry. And it got to where Howard Lyman almost lost his ability to walk because of a tumor in his spine somewhere, I think it was. Does he talk about that
I
in the
don't
book?
remember. It's been a long time,
Yeah. So he's the man that was on Oprah Winfrey's program one time.
Oh, okay.
And told the truth, basically came on her show and told the truth about.
And then he switched to, he quit being
Right, exactly.
a cattle farmer.
He gave it all up, and he does not, and quit eating animal foods entirely, and became kind of an activist. And so anyway, that's how Oprah Winfrey got in trouble with the beef industry that one time.
Wow.
Well, they probably figured she had a lot of money.
Well, see, that's the problem. It's like if you you and I were just here, your show, Chautauqua County, but like the Mercy for Animals people, like they're trying to expose, so people would know what's really going on. But as soon as like the people with the money find out, like, uh-oh, here's a problem, we got to get rid of that. They'll squash you. And Oprah can't afford to, so I can just imagine.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe they're going to come after you now, Gail.
They haven't yet.
I would encourage anybody who's even thinking, like, if they're watching this or they're curious. The Farm Sanctuary, and it's in Watkins Glen. You can go there for a visit. It's a beautiful place. You can even stay there. They have some little cabins and stuff. You got to make a reservation, but it's a wealth of information, and you can see how the animals live now. And like Gail has all these brochures about each kind of animal and what they go through. That's what got me the day that I was home, 4th of July in 2005, and my son said, "Well, just look at the website, Mom." And so I did, and that was it for me. I never had made the connection before between, like, yeah, these animals, they just want to, nobody wants to die, you're dragging them off to slaughter and hanging them upside down, and they've got to be terrified. I just can't even imagine, like, the anxiety and the terror in these poor creatures, I mean, I was telling Gail the other day, I put one of my dogs in the car to go to the vet, and she was just shivering and shaking because car rides are not something she enjoys. And so we don't really take her in the car. Like some of them, they can't wait to go for a ride. And she doesn't like to go for a ride.
So you don't take her for rides unless she has to go to the
Yeah,
veterinarian.
right. So she's scared, and it's like, well, the poor thing. Now imagine, this veal calf that's been with its mom, even in this happy place that this lady was talking about. Oh, they're treated wonderfully, blah, blah, blah. They're out in the pasture. Now you're loading them into a truck and taking them, and they're on transport, and that's scary, and traffic, and then now you're unloaded, and you're like, where's my mom? Hey, your mom's down that chute, go get her, and you're going to get your throat slit. So I just can't even imagine the terror of these poor creatures when they're basically all babies, being strung up. And so let's hear about fish, because I don't know that, I don't eat fish either, of course, but
let me.
I know there was.
Where did I put it?
A lot of it is factory farmed now.
I had it here a minute ago. Let's see.
That used to be the great new thing. Oh, we can just raise them ourselves, and then you see how it's being done, and they're swimming around in filth.
Yeah. Somehow,
it's like, ooh, that looks good.
I don't know how I managed to misplace that, but
yeah, it was right there.
Yeah, but
it was one of the.
One of these with a brown edge.
Yeah, one with a brown.
Maybe I dropped it on the floor. I don't know. I guess I didn't.
Well, anyway.
We know stuff about it, so we can tell them, right?
Yeah, they're basically swimming around in filth and crowded conditions.
If they're farm raised.
Yeah, if they're farm raised.
Yeah.
But even if they're out and you're wild catching, you're going to catch a lot of collateral things that you aren't fishing for, and they're going to die, or
Well, a lot of people think they're being humane when they catch a fish, which gets caught on a hook. They think they're being humane if they take it off the hook and throw it back in the water.
Right.
Because they're not actually going to take it home and eating it. They're just doing it for something fun. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just stab a hook through this creature's lip for fun. Like, okay, how would I like that, you know?
Well, I wound up meeting some people over at the Chautauqua institution one summer. And it was something that was printed on either a t-shirt or a cap, that it was like a married couple, and it turns out they have some sort of a camp for women who are recovering from breast cancer. And where they take them fly fishing, because something about it's good for the women because it strengthens the area. There's something about,
Couldn't you just go to the gym?
Yeah, then that's what I was thinking. I didn't say anything to them because I didn't want to get in a fight with them.
Right.
But, I'm thinking, I could have said, well, I'm vegan.
Right.
I'm vegan, so I probably never get breast cancer.
Well, there's one thing, Right.
So, but I was thinking that's one of the weirdest things I'd ever heard of, is taking breast cancer patients out fly fishing.
Yeah.
So, but if you're eating fish and other seafood, water is so contaminated these days that actually, if you're eating fish, this was told to me by certain experts, you're eating mercury, dioxins, plus plastic, now that there's a lot of plastic in the water.
They even warn you, like, if you're going to eat, fish is healthy, but you should limit yourself to this many servings per week because of the mercury and the plastics and whatever else can, be in them.
And then there was something too, you've heard over the last several years, you've heard things about what kind of poison was it they were talking about in rice? I can't remember what it was. Contaminated.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Was it arsenic?
Yeah, I think that's
I think
it.
it was arsenic.
That's it. Well, I brought it up with some other vegan friends of mine one time, and they said, well, that was caused by runoff from chicken farms, and that arsenic was being put in the feed that was being, the commercial feed that was being given to the chickens. So.
Well, there we go. We're just, see that.
Well, you know, you put poison in the environment somewhere.
Yeah.
And it spreads.
Oh, yeah,
it
going
spreads
somewhere.
all over the place. It doesn't just stay where you put it. You know, you get rainwater and it washes things and spreads it around and everything, and wind, and so.
So everybody should just eat plants.
Yeah.
Come on, people. Just eat plants.
Well, it does make a big difference in the way you feel when you're only eating plant foods.
Well, yeah, I feel a lot better than ever. But you know, it's been 20 years for me now, which is great. So.
And the thing about, I gave Patty a book here.
Oh yeah.
It's on eating a raw plant diet.
There we go.
And I've had some experience with eating mainly just raw plant foods for an extended period of time, and within a month, you notice the difference. All of a sudden, your body has a sensation of cleanness like you've never felt before, and you have more energy than you had when you were young. And because it's so fresh, you know.
I can't wait. I'm gonna make something today.
Yeah, good idea. You might have to go to the store first.
Well, I have to stop at the store anyway, so I'm gonna run up the tops and see what they have. You know, maybe I'll pick out a recipe first and then go into the store. But
yeah, that would be a good idea. They might not have everything the recipe calls for, but
my son made a couple of years ago at Thanksgiving. He made a raw apple pie, and it was really, really good. So.
Oh yeah, the best peach pie I've ever had is raw peach pie. One friend of mine makes raw peach pie, and it is really good. And I remember having raw lasagna one time that somebody had made, where they'd used thin slices of summer squashes and like that. For like in place of the lasagna noodles and like that. So,
what's for lunch?
Well, I hate to say it because this is such an important topic, and it really, I know we've laughed from time to time during the episode, but we really do have a lot of compassion for animals, and so we're hoping you'll think about this and think about what the animals experience, what their lives are like. And Patty, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a big help when one person cancels and somebody else will agree to do it, you know.
And I just hope maybe one person in your audience, so like even if one person, two people, they think about it, and just, even if they just like, you don't even have to, I hate to use the expression cold turkey, but just think about your choices and, you know, try to cut back, and you'll feel better too, especially if you know, I mean, you can be vegan, and I mean, when I was first, it's amazing how much stuff I would just be throwing in my mouth and not even thinking about. And when I had to actually think about what I was eating, you know, I already felt better.
Just thinking that you were going to make the change.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see those of you in the viewing audience when I do the next episode.